Guam Autospot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam Autospot, where the savings never stop.
Buy fuel, get Wendy's. Drive to your nearest 76 Circle K and get free Wendy's. Yes, free. Fuel up with $30 and score your choice of a 6-piece crispy chicken nuggets or a juicy junior cheeseburger deluxe. Fresh, hot, and packed with flavor. But hurry, quantities are limited and this delicious deal won't last long. So hit the road to 76 Circle K, fuel up, and get Wendy's free before it's gone.
It's me, Wednesday Addams. I regret to inform you that I have devised the meal of misfortune with Wendy's. Normally I'd be against this type of capitalistic corporate synergy. But when the other pigtailed provocateur said I could concoct my own Frosty, I melted. My meal is tribute to the suffering that awaits us all. It's pure torture for your taste buds, with 4 nightmarish dips of dread. Don't waste my time asking which ones you'll get. You must surrender to your fate. Enjoy the anguish.
Dare to try? Something new? Life's too short!
You gotta chill with a snackable drink.
Life is too short. Hey, you gotta chill.
Mogu Mogu.
Moku moku! Kandit News is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good evening, Marianas. It is 7:44 p.m. on Monday, September 8, 2025. My name is Troy Torres. And because it's September 8, we should all know this is the birthday of the Holy Mother, the Mother of God. Happy birthday to the Blessed Virgin Mary. My name is Troy Torres. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I think it's been a while since I've done this live thing. I think I did this last on maybe Thursday or Wednesday or something like that. It's not because I haven't wanted to. It's just... the days get full, and Saturday was my day off. Anyway, so I was thinking about the gubernatorial election coming up next year in 2026, and one of the things that I was thinking about was how good it feels to not have any attachment whatsoever to this upcoming election. So what I mean by that was in 2018, I was a part of Dennis Rodriguez's campaign, and that's when I was going through all of my problems with drugs and all that stuff. And then after Dennis Rodriguez lost the primary election, for me, it was about, it was a whole revenge thing against Ray Tenorio. And so it was just, anyway, that was just one, I was a complete mess. And then in 2022, my good friend Mike St. Nicholas ran for governor. And so, I naturally supported Mike St. Nicholas and I wanted him to win. He didn't prevail in the primary election against Lou Leon Guerrero for a bunch of different reasons, right? And so, that's the 2022 election. I think a lot of us looking back, a lot of people who voted one way look back at that election and probably think, gosh, we should have voted for Mike. And I'm here to tell you, hashtag see I told you so. But so in 2026, he's not running for anything. And I have no skin in the game in 2020 for for the first time in a very long time. It actually doesn't matter to me who wins for governor. I'm sure I'll have a personal preference by the time the election comes around, and I'll vote for somebody in the primary election. I'll vote for somebody in the general election. I'll go and vote. But as long as the central figure in the corruption of the past several years does not prevail, and I mean Josh Tenorio, I'm fine. I really don't care if Joe Snogestein runs and wins. Really don't care if Tony Atta wins. Don't care if Marcel Camacho wins. Don't care if Mike Cruz wins. Don't care if Roy Respicio enters the race. Don't care if he wins. I wouldn't even care if Mickey Mouse won for governor of Guam in 2026. As long as it ain't Josh Tenorio to continue on the plunder of our people that has been apparently, according to all the black and white that's been presented in documents going back to the year 2019, show his family was enriched when he became the lieutenant governor. And according to the federal grand jury and the United States attorney and the FBI, his family was enriched off the backs of the poor and federal programs, according to that indictment on June 25. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about necessarily Josh Tenorio, but what I wanted to talk about was, because I have this, I think a pretty clear perception, because I don't have any bias going into this 2026 election. I think I'm able to see things a little more clearly than I did in 2022, certainly more than in 2018 when I was always high on drugs. And I noticed something. So I noticed that whenever we did breaking news about a candidate announcing that he is going to run for governor, I think the first one was Josh Tenorio. At the time, this was a couple years ago. At the time, there was a bit of excitement, but then there was a whole lot of like most of the comments ever since Josh Tenorio announced, at least on Kandit, at least our audience of 67,000 followers on Facebook, 20-some thousand on Instagram, and whatever our numbers are on our website and our YouTube, right? Mainly Facebook, right? Is what I'm thinking about here. At least among our audience, the reaction to Josh Tenorio has been a net negative. There was some excitement in the beginning, mostly negative though, and then as things move forward, as people became more and more dissatisfied with the administration, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And then, of course, when we started covering our investigative report into the corruption case, and we started reporting that in September last year, things started to build up against Josh Tenorio more and more. And so there was, at least among Kandit's audience, which is a rather large audience, it wasn't looking good for Josh Tenorio. And then Charlie Hermosa, a Republican, he said, that he was going to throw his hat in the ring for governor. There was some interest in him, but the general idea was, who is Charlie Hermosa? I think people were playing a wait and see, but then he pulled out of that race. And so that doesn't even matter, right? And I think after that, if I'm not mistaken, the next person to announce that he was going to run for governor was Frank Blas Jr. And there was some excitement, but not a lot. And then the next person after him was Tony Atta. And then there was some excitement, but not a lot. And then Joe Snogestein. And there was some excitement, but there was a whole bunch of negative comments that came out. There were also, to be sure, there were also negative comments about Tony Atta and Frank Blas. But I noticed there were a few more negative comments against Joe Snogestein, right? And I'm not talking about the people who normally comment. I'm talking about like people who just, and they're not troll accounts either. They just seem like real people who just wanted to express an opinion. So the point is that all these people who announced that they were running for governor, there wasn't too much excitement that I noticed. It was just like, and I thought maybe it's because it's so early. It's only 2025, the election isn't until next year. And then last night, late too, like at 9:00 or 9:30 or something, we posted the breaking news that former Lieutenant Governor, current Adjutant General, Dr. Michael Cruz, he's a surgeon, he's a doctor, he's a medical doctor. He confirmed to me last night that he is considering running for governor. And so I put that out like around 9:30 at night. And almost immediately, the reactions in the comments, and then, of course, the background talk, the political talk that's coming in through my phone, it started. And it was, except for a couple of people, very positive. And the excitement seems palpable. And so I was thinking about that, and I was wondering, what makes this different from all the others? Could it be that this one happened, like it was the latest that happened, like it's closer to the election, and maybe people are starting to think about it more? Is it because this was on a Sunday? But that didn't make sense because it's a late Sunday night, like 9:30 at night. Who's really awake, right? And then I checked the post this morning, and it had already been viewed by 20,000 people. And I thought, oh, something's going on here. Let me think about this a little bit more. And then I was like, what makes Mike Cruz different from these other people that have announced? And this is what I'm surmising. This is what I'm thinking. He's not a current office holder. He is not. Mike Cruz is not currently in office. He is not someone who voters are assigning blame for the state of the government and the state of the economy, because he is not currently an elected senator or an elected person from Adelup, or someone who is in a, for lack of a better term, political position. He is in the Adjutant General, and that is something that's appointed by the governor. But, we normally view the Adjutant General position as someone who is qualified, someone who is professional, someone who, you needed a certain amount of qualifications in order, and a whole lot of respect in order to get that job anyway. It's a slim pickings for whoever the governor is. And a lot of times, a governor chooses an adjutant general not based on politics whatsoever. If there's some sort of political tie, okay, that's good. But normally it's, whoever is going to run that organization so that it doesn't become a problem for the governor. And so I think, in my thinking of things, right, if this is what people, if the reason why people are more excited about Mike Cruz is because he is, quote unquote, an outsider to the current leadership that people blame for the problems that we have now, then this has to be a change election. If my train of thought is correct, if people seem a little more excited about Mike Cruz than all of the other candidates, it's not necessarily about Mike Cruz, but more so the idea that people have that Mike Cruz is this outsider, not involved in the current affairs, and so therefore he's a better chance at changing things than the other candidates. And this is what's important in this discussion, especially for anyone who might be involved in any of the political campaigns, because it's not too late for any of these political campaigns, any of these gubernatorial teams to take up this mantle. I get the feeling, and it kind of makes sense, that the team that's going to prevail in the November general election, first of all, the teams that are going to prevail in the primary elections, very different kind of election. The teams that are going to prevail in the primary elections for Democrats and Republicans are going to be the Democrat and the Republican teams that have the better on-the-ground campaign, their ability to canvass the villages, and on election day to call up and get voters from their lazy butts in their homes over to the voting booth. That's who's going to win the primary election in each of those campaigns. After that, the victors of the primary election in each of those two campaigns, they're going to compete. And I get the sense, and this is when the general elections where more of the people come out and vote, right? I'm getting the sense right now that what's building in this island is a resentment of the status quo. And it's something that builds up every few years anyway. This is not something new, especially because we have an administration that by the time the election comes will have been in power for almost 8 years. 8 years of us following the same orders, being used to the same thing, being governed the same way is a long time. And just naturally, as people, as voters, we are looking for something different. Add to that the corruption, the growing discovery of corruption that goes all the way to Josh Tenorio, the Lieutenant Governor of Guam, also a candidate for governor, and connecting Josh Tenorio to this 8-year-long administration. And it is a recipe for change, for a desire for change among the people. So whoever is running for governor, and right now I get the sense that this change mantle is being taken up, perhaps unwittingly, just assigned to him because he is the outsider. It's being, people are seeing Mike Cruz as the change guy. He's the outsider. He's the different guy. So maybe he's the change guy. But I think between now and the election in November, whoever it is that wins the primary for the Democrats and for the Republicans, that can convince the people that they are the ones who can change things, who will change things, is going to win the election. And how do you do that, right? And over the past couple of weeks, I've lamented that the Republican majority, which was elected to do things differently, and among the things they were elected to do, to oversee the administration, to call out the administration where the administration is wrong, and especially where it deals with corruption. And this golden opportunity is before the Republicans right now with all this stuff going on with the scenarios. And where are the Republican senators? Why aren't they saying anything? More importantly, politically, you have two members of the Republican majority, the two top members of the Republican majority. Both have said that they're running for governor. Speaker Frank Blas, Vice Speaker Tony Atta, the two people who you would think would be the first to call for oversight hearings, call for investigations, call out the governor's administration or the lieutenant governor, right? Haven't said anything. And so how are we as voters from now to the election supposed to believe that either one is going to be a change agent? And the answer is quite simple. It ain't too late for any of them, for either Frank Blas or Tony Atta, to be the person to say, we have to start looking into this. We cannot as a government tolerate this corruption. We cannot tolerate wasteful spending. We cannot tolerate mismanaged contracts in this government, or turning a blind eye to, whatever one of them, both of them, whoever of them needs to take up the mantle. Or Joe San Augustine, who's running for governor, is a sitting senator, can be the Democrat. And if he does this, it's even more powerful because he is a Democrat. If he's the one that comes out and says, we need to start investigating these things that are going on in the administration. We need to start I'm calling for an oversight hearing, or I'm introducing this bill to stop this, whatever these practices that happened over the past 6.5 years under Josh Tenorio, stop this from happening in the future. That scores points for Joe San Augustine being some sort of change agent or taking up that change mantle. And then there's this idea politically What if Mike Cruz chooses Frank Blas to be his running mate? That's a pretty powerful team. Now, the problem would be if that did happen, and if change really is at the top of voters' minds, right? It would become even more incumbent on Frank Blas to be the change agent in the legislature because he is the sitting speaker of the legislature. And you wouldn't want any sort of, voter disdain for the current leaders not doing anything about the current problems, rubbing off on the new guy, so to speak, Mike Cruz. I mean, look what's already happening to Governor Lulian Guerrero, the rub off that's happening. Nothing in anyone's investigation, whether it's the feds, at least that has been revealed, our investigation into the black and white documents, KUAM's investigation, nothing about corruption is pointing to Governor Lulian Guerrero. Nothing. But look at almost every news story and every single news station on this island. Anything where you mention Governor Lulian Guerrero or Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio, whatever the subject is, they could be talking about what they're going to get their kids for Christmas. And people in the comments, and I'm not talking about trolls either or normal political people, I'm talking about regular people, are pissed. They are furious about the corruption. And it isn't just, and it's at a point where people are not just stopping at Josh Tenorio without any evidence pointing at Governor Lulian Guerrero. People are already connecting Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio up the ladder to Governor Lulian Guerrero. I remember just like maybe 4 days ago or something, we posted, I think it was the governor like had some sort of address about the budget. I don't know. We Addams sent something and we posted it up, right? Because it's the governor giving a special address. And someone in the comments wrote, "You look nice in Pua pink." The governor she really was wearing a nice pink outfit. She looked really good. She wasn't talking about Pua. She was talking about the budget, I think. And someone was just like, "Oh, you look good or like, I like your Pua pink." She had nothing to do with that whole Pua thing. I think people, after 8 years, they're tired. They're also mad because of the corruption that's being unearthed on the 7th of these 8 years. And I get the sense that people might also be upset that they feel that their elected leaders think they're dumb or something like that. And it's the only way that I can really explain why is it so different. How come all these other people who announced that they're running for governor, they got such lackluster, net negative response? And I remember when I was in politics and, someone announced that they're running for governor, it was a big deal. Like there would even be these big announcements and these parties, and it would be like a very exciting, palpable sort of thing. I remember that was the case in 2018. In 2022, we were in the midst of a pandemic and, and a very depressed economic situation. So I don't know that you can really draw a comparison from there. But you would think that at the end of 8 years in a season like this, where there are no more restrictions and, there's this chance for something new, there would be more excitement, but there was none. No excitement about all the other candidates. And then all of a sudden you got this other guy, this just kind of out of nowhere. I mean, there were people who kind of knew that Mike Cruz wanted to run, but for the vast majority of people out of nowhere, a former lieutenant governor from 16 years ago, he is the adjutant general. He's got this, he had this career in the army. He won a bronze medal. He went to several war tours, right? He comes out and he says, "Yeah, I think I'm considering running for governor." And the lights turn on in politics on Guam. And people get excited. I have to believe That's because people want change. And they think that this guy who is new, in contrast to all of the others who are part of the system, represents that for them. Whether Mike Cruz continues to live up to that change agent stardom that he has, pardon me, that he has right now, or whether somebody else takes up that mantle is really, it's up to these candidates to figure this out. All I know, and again, I'll say this, let the best man or woman win. I don't care, as long as it ain't Josh Tenorio. But I would like for all of them to spend all of their advertising dollars here at Candid News. Please contact me, Troy Torres. Advertise at candidnews.com. We'll get our political rate cards up right away, so you all can start advertising with us. Let me see what you guys are talking about here. All former politicians trying to get back in the game. Get some new names in there, says Pete Borja. Lovey again says MSN and EJ Calvo. Lovey, I've talked to Mike St. Nicholas many times. He does not want to run for anything. Guam Victor says Charlie is new. Yeah, but I don't think Charlie is wanting to run for governor anymore. He wants to run for senator. Antilani Salas says, correct, a very long time. Yes, the corruption. Will it end? You know, I don't know. I think we just have to be better voters, right? Tim Couch says 8 years of bloated government that has almost doubled in those 8 years, and we are still broke. I don't know that it's almost doubled, Tim, unless you're adding the pandemic funds to the sum that you're talking about. Then, okay, yeah, I think if you add the pandemic funds, maybe it's a close to doubling, but if you don't add the pandemic funds in, I don't think it's anywhere close to doubling. Tim says you can do that by first stop the lying and promises and let your actions talk, and not your mouth saying I promise. I agree. Guam Victor says, what about Ginger? My understanding is that Ginger Cruz is running for Congress. I don't think she's made an official announcement though, and so I guess we'll wait and see. I haven't heard that she's running for anything else but Congress, but I don't know. You know who I heard is running for Congress as well is former Senator Mary Torres. That would be one heck of a congressional battle in both the primary and the general elections. Charlie Hermosa says we need to stand up and not be afraid. I'm with you, brother. I'm not afraid. I ain't afraid. Marcus Veritas, my friend, says Busta Talusi Cruz, he was LT before, almost non-existent during his term. He should stick to advocating for better medical care. Every candidate, pardon me, always has an agenda when they're running for office. That has never changed. What also hasn't changed is once they are voted in, suddenly all of them ideas and agendas are forgotten and ignored. What sucks here is that there really isn't any change, but more of the same old exception with the true outsider in EJ Calvo. Hasu Toto Guam, Hadzi na you gonna elect into office. Do the research, say another thing that is fact, and that's all these that held office in the past have now, after X amount of years, decided to run again, said they're hoping the people have forgotten their political sins of the past. Some that will cast their votes. Now, it's a very high possibility that they wasn't even born when these formers were in office and are now deciding to run again. That is what some of them will also look to take advantage of. Fan Hongi fast on that. I love it. Point well taken, my friend. Tim Couch says only the private sector can beat out the GovGuam voting machine that's going to be undemanding of the workers instead of getting on their arses to do their jobs to the best of their abilities. That's the thing, Tim. The private sector did not come out to vote in 2022. And I have a feeling that thousands who were in the private sector and voted in Guam left Guam over the past 5 years. Joan Annie Cruz says, too silly. Tim Count says we must stand up as taxpayers that are tired of waste, fraud, and abuse and unite to change the defunct government. That first requires capable, sincere, competent people who will not be purchased by the corporate corrupt or swayed by the political grandfathers and the political patriarchy. Requires that there are enough of those candidates to run into and be majorities wherever those majorities are needed, like in the legislature. And it requires us as voters to elect them. So two sides of this equation, right? Bennett Lujan Dueñas says Charlie Hermosa for Republican senator. Yeah, I understand that Charlie is running for senator as a Republican. My dear friend Fabian Indalecio says, Biba people of Guam, you deserve new and better leadership. Hagumas, Fabian, because in the CNMI, you guys deserve new and better leadership too. And I am concerned that the old ways have come back into the governor's office in the CNMI and are looking to make a comeback in the 2026 election over there. We're going to discuss the 2026 election over there as well. Now, if there's one guy who I think we should elect, can you elect it? If there's one guy who should be leading or having some sort of say in tourism recovery, or maybe elect him as a senator, I don't know. I'm not qualified enough to make this statement as a voter because I don't know him that well. But he just seems like to really know what he's talking about when it comes to finances and the government and the economy in Guam, and especially with tourism. As a guy named Alexander Dueñas. And he wrote an op-ed for the Pacific Daily News. And I don't know why Alexander's not writing his op-eds for Kandit, because we'll absolutely print his stuff or publish his stuff. But he wrote a letter to the editor in the Pacific Daily News, and it was titled, Even with Subsidized Airfare, Guam Too Expensive on the Ground. This is one of those things that, like, when you think about change, right? And when you just look at the commentary, the conversations that people are having online, and hear the conversations on the street, when you're having conversations in the bank or at the gym or at the store, people are talking about these things. This is how I know that these issues are that this desire for change is palpable, is because the government of Guam, and I'll tell you that I know how the government works and how these politicians work. Politicians and the government bureaucrats don't ever expect that the common person is paying attention to what is happening at the Guam Visitors Bureau and the intricacies of the whole tourism development effort. But the fact that you have so many people with so many opinions that fly in the face of all of these so-called industry experts, and by the way, if they were so expert in this industry, why is the industry so failing? Can we just talk about that for a second? If you guys really are the ones who are supposed to have all the answers to all of our tourism needs, and you're going to spend our tax dollars to invest, so-called, in these answers that you have because you're the professionals, why are we taking advice from you guys when it's your businesses and tourism that are failing? That whatever pivot needed to happen, whatever change needed, whatever sort of modernization in best practices and in business practices that needed to be made since the pandemic era, because we are years since this pandemic ended, why are your businesses failing? Why are you expecting the taxpayers to bail you out? Why do the taxpayers have to pay for your marketing? Why do the taxpayers have to pay for people's trips to all of these different places to get people to go to your businesses here in Guam that are failing? I think that that's a conversation that needs to happen, and it's a conversation that is happening among people. And I'm glad that it is, because before you didn't have this kind of discourse where you had common folks talking about tourism and what is needed to improve tourism. And what I'm hearing from all different kinds of people is that the way that GVB and these so-called tourism experts want to promote Guam and do things doesn't make any sense. Like giving away $11 million in airline subsidies to bring people to Guam who, without those subsidies, didn't want to come to Guam. Why? Because Guam is so expensive. It's so simple. And the reason that it's so simple and that we all in the simple category are qualified to make this statement is because we are the ones who know how expensive Guam is. And if we as Guamanians know how expensive Guam is, how can we reasonably expect someone who is not from here to come to our island and not also feel and know how expensive Guam is? And it's not like these things aren't being talked about on Korean and Japanese travel message boards. Everything that GVB wants to do, not everything, because they do want to do the product, they say they want to do the product enhancement thing, but everything else is just sort of stupid. And I feel like they just sat down for a couple of days and they were like, let's brainstorm this, guys. No idea is a bad idea. We'll put it up on the board and then we'll whittle it down. And I wonder whether any real thought is going into this, any sort of innovation or ingenuity. Because I'll tell you this, a guy who is not in GVB, a guy who's not considered a tourism professional, a guy from the street, his name is Alexander Duenas. He wrote a letter to the editor. I want to read it to you because it makes so much sense. And please, if you get the opportunity, read this for yourself in the black and white with your eyes to connect with the actual op-ed, because it's just such a great read. But let me read this to you. Stand by. The new Sunday night market in Suman added another great entertainment option for Guam's locals, our service members, and our visitors who are already here. However, tourists are not going to come to Guam just because of this attraction. As such, the quest to recover our dwindling tourism industry continues. Recently, Guam Visitors Bureau acknowledged that what we have been doing to promote Guam is not working as it had before and have proposed some new ideas. However, I highly doubt that they will deliver the desired effects of increased tourism. Some of these include 1. Promoting Guam to the Filipino and Malaysian markets. Yeah, Alexander, let me just stop right here. Alexander, when I heard about that too, I was like, how stupid is that idea? Okay, so this is what Alexander says. It is well known that Filipino and Malay travelers as a group are even more price responsive than our Korean visitors. Additionally, both of these countries have climates and natural environments that are very similar to Guam's. Why would these visitors come here when they have everything we have and more in their home countries and it's far less expensive? Great freaking questions, Alexander Duenas. I would like to hear a reasonable and sensible answer coming from GVB or the so-called tourism industry experts that can actually answer your questions, because I doubt we're going to hear anything that makes any sense. You know what we're going to hear is a lot of big smart words and a lot of, we've been doing this for years. We've been doing this for decades. And to which I'm going to reply, yeah. And over the last few years, you guys have sucked at it so bad that you're here asking us taxpayers to bail you out. Let's continue with Alexander Duenas' letter. It makes sense to promote Guam to countries where one cannot get warm waters and sunny 85-degree weather in November, December, January, or February. Common sense, right? Number 2, hiring influencers, movie stars, and sports teams to promote Guam. I think hiring influencers is a good idea, but they have to be travel influencers with a record of high conversion rates who promote destinations, not influencers who are just promoting themselves. We then must track their performance metrics to determine if their efforts translate to a significant increase in visitor arrivals based on what we are paying them. Movie stars and sports teams will not deliver the results we want or need. Thank you, Alexander. Number 3, promoting Guam during sporting events. Advertising Guam during sporting events also does not convert to tourists. Why are we trying to sell a Guam vacation to people who are not looking to go on vacation? Gosh, this guy makes so much freaking sense. That's exactly what we are doing by spending our limited advertising dollars at these events because they charge by the total number of people watching the event, live and televised. I watch a lot of different live and televised sports events like basketball, football, hockey, and I can firmly say that most people who use the restrooms or get snacks during the breaks, if there is a particularly popular advertisement, we leave one person to monitor the television and get called when that specific ad comes on. Number 4, promoting Guam at travel trade association shows. Oh, I love this one, by the way. GVB data. He throws this right back at GVB. GVB data shows that a very low number of our visitors book their travel through a travel agency. The rest book their travel directly. So, why are we spending money marketing to travel agents at travel shows? We need to market directly to consumers through advertising on social media platforms, travel magazines, and using travel influencers with a proven record of high conversion rates. Also, this is great. This is a gem. This is one of the gems in this op-ed by Alexander Duenas. Why do GVB directors of past and present go on promotional tours? Doesn't GVB have a marketing and promotions team? The job of the director is not to travel to promote Guam abroad. It is to manage GVB operations and to craft and guide overall strategy. Number 5, introducing sustainable tourism. Sustainable ecotourism is a niche market that will not bring the number of visitors we need to recover our tourism industry, and paying a sustainable tourism consulting firm would be a colossal waste of money we cannot afford to spend. This idea has not been heard in tourism until the current general manager took over. I do not know how sustainable we are with our 26-story, fully air-conditioned hotels and huge tourist buses that burn diesel fuel. Someone buy Alexander Duenas a freaking cocktail right now and tell him, whatever he runs for in this government, I'm voting for this guy. It says, however, if we want to move in this direction, then we must be prepared for the significant cost that comes with sustainable tourism, and they are very high. Although cleaning up and sprucing up the island are important, I do not believe that these are the main problems with Guam's tourism recovery. There is something that is intrinsically wrong with Guam as a destination, especially for the Korean market. Can I just stop right here, just on this sustainable tourism thing? And Mabel Dojluhan, who writes Mabel's Table for the CNMI, and sometimes, rarely though, gets into stuff about Guam. We published something of hers tonight where she talks about the CNMI and their Marianas Visitors Authority is having almost parallel problems that we are identifying in our GVB and tourism industry. They have something called HANMI, the Hotel Association of the Northern Mariana Islands. It's much like our GHRA, but their HANMI is it's much more how should I say, consolidated in its power and its influence in the economy over there. And they also have the Saipan Chamber of Commerce. They've been pushing a certain type of agenda, and it's reminiscent of the agenda that the tourism industry professionals and GVB have been pushing here, and they all involve using public funds to do things that just boggle the mind. They just don't make any sense. So Mabel Dojlan called this out in an op-ed tonight, and when she was talking about regenerative tourism, which is something that that the MVA is proposing as one of their changes, so-called, over there. And Alexander Duenas talking about this whole sustainable tourism reminds me of something that's in Mabel's article where she's like, I can just see people sitting around trying to figure out where they're going to spend their next dollar to go traveling. And they're going to be all like, let's go to Saipan because they have regenerative tourism. When did you ever hear of someone who was like, I want to visit Guam because of their sustainable tourism? When did you as a traveler ever say something like, I would like to visit Kyoto, Japan because of their sustainable tourism. It's not why we go traveling. Come on. So Alexander Duenas continues, I suspect that one of the biggest, if not the biggest issue that is causing our problems is the prices that are charged for accommodations, attractions, and food. As such, our visitors are showing their dissatisfaction with their feet. Even with the heavily subsidized airfare, the word is out that Guam is just too expensive on the ground. Alexander's right. Look at the message boards of Korean and Japanese travelers. The problem is that we're expensive. The problem is that we are charging prices for things that should not be charged because that it does not meet that value. And why are tourists going to pay for $200 a night for a hotel room that looks, feels, and smells crappier than hotel rooms that they can get in a Southeast Asian destination for $60 a night, $40 a night? Why are they going to pay $25, $30, $40 for a plate of food when they can get much better cuisine at some other Southeast Asian location for $5, $12, $14? Continuing with Alexander Duenas' op-ed. Even with the heavily subsidized airfare, the word is out that Guam is just too expensive on the ground. To keep Guam from cratering further, we need to do some basic things. First, we identified the demographic we are going to pursue, and no, it can't be the Korean, Japanese, etc. market. We need to decide exactly who from the Japanese, Korean, etc. market we are going to target. Travelers with or without families, young people, etc. Second, we need to decide what product we are going to sell them, party or relaxation destination. Third, we need to create a Guam experience based on these factors. Furthermore, our prices need to be adjusted to make them more budget-friendly, which is what our price-conscious visitors want and expect. Finally, GVB needs to market Guam honestly for what it is and what it has to offer. Guam's tourism industry needs to pivot, and it needs to pivot fast on several fronts simultaneously because what it has been doing is not working, and what it is planning to do probably will not yield the results we need. We can still turn tourism around, but we need to be focused and realistic. Only then can we truly start to make meaningful steps to recovery. How is this guy who gets paid $0 have all the answers for tourism and our tourism recovery? And all the people who we are paying have the dumbest answers in the world, and worse, spending our money that should be going to the Guam Department of Education or to the Guam Memorial Hospital, and our senators get swindled by all of it. I don't know. My dear friends, it's late. Good night. I love you all, and God bless you.
You asked, we delivered. Guam AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
Buy fuel, get Wendy's. Drive to your nearest 76 Circle K and get free Wendy's. Yes, free. Fuel up with $30 and score your choice of a 6-piece crispy chicken nuggets or a juicy junior cheeseburger deluxe. Fresh, hot, and packed with flavor. But hurry, quantities are limited and this delicious deal won't last long. So hit the road to 76 Circle K, fuel up, and get Wendy's free before it's gone.
Dare to try? Something new? Life's too short!
You gotta chill with the snackable drink.
Life is too short. Hey, you gotta chill.
Mogu Mogu.
Moku moku!